On today's episode of Ask an Artist, we have David Johnson, otherwise known as DJ. DJ is the CEO and creative director of Undertone FX, which is a company that specializes in real-time visual effects for video games and AR, VR experiences. It's some really cool stuff. ActionVFX has also partnered with DJ and his team at Undertone FX to create our brand new line of real-time visual effects assets. These are the best of the best, and they're available on the Unity Asset Store and the Unreal Engine Marketplace. But we'll talk more about those effects in the episode. Our conversation today is titled The Anatomy of Real-Time Effects. What is a real-time effect? What makes it different from any other type of visual effect? And what are the implications it has on not just video game development, but also filmmaking? So let's jump right in.
Hey everybody, Luke here from ActionVFX with another episode of Ask an Artist. Today's a really exciting episode. I've got my friend DJ, David Johnson from Undertone FX. What's up, DJ? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. What's happening, Luke? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. This is an episode we've wanted to put out for quite a while. We've had a lot of really exciting things going on. Really over the past couple of years we've been working on together, but have more recently, in December of 2021, come to the forefront of like being public. And what I'm referring to is our Unreal Engine, Unity Engine collaboration with you and your team at Undertone FX. It's seriously just been such a cool project to be able to collaborate on. And, you know, with our little keynote that we did, it's just really exciting to see and set up the future of, you know, this collaboration, but also the industry as a whole. So I'm really excited to dig into talking about real-time effects.
Yeah, here we go. Game engines.
Let's do it. Game engines. Too Long didn't read. They're legit. And that's pretty much it. I don't know. All right. I'll kick us off with just kind of an opening question, DJ. But before that, just give us a little bit about your origin story, you know, how you kind of got interested in the medium of game engines as a whole, and then like what drew you to real-time over another way to express, you know, art.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I kind of fell into it when I was going to school for, you know, animation and art. My intent was to head to film. And I have a single film credit, the Dungeons and Dragons movie from, I don't know,
nice.
like late 90s, whatever. I worked on that, I did next to nothing on it, but my name's in the credits.
And it's D&D, so.
Yeah, which I'm totally into. So
yeah.
I'm excited for the new ones that are coming out. But yeah, so yeah, I was studying, you know, art and animation in college, and then just, you know, was learning Maya, 3D Studio Max, and traditional cell animation, which I'm very grateful for that little slice, you know, life drawing, all that stuff. Just getting the fundamentals in place was great. My first computer graphics job was in the mid 90s. I was a colorist. I colored black and white cartoons and movies and TV commercials. I did that for a very brief time. It was a fun job, but
nice.
A little rough because it was a graveyard shift.
Yeah. What kind of like software and tools did you use for that? I'm sure.
Yeah, it was custom. It was so the company was called CST. They're now defunct for a very long time, but it was Silicon Graphics workstations. You know, each node was like 100 or 250 grand, like an obscene amount of money. There was like a Challenger, like closet sized like supercomputer in the back room over there.
Yeah.
And this is in Culver City, California. And it was like the gear was so expensive they had to run it. They had to have people operating them 24 hours a day. So there were 3 shifts,
so
and
cool.
I started on graveyard shift, which was super rough. And then,
like, man, we're gonna have to learn to pay for this thing.
Yeah,
it's like we gotta have people working it.
It was a cool job though. I definitely learned a lot. I was pretty fast at it, but the problem I had was we had a quota, and I would hit my quota in like the first hour of work, and like I just could not stay awake. They didn't care really. That like I kind of got into this weird thing where I'd have my headphones on. It was a very dark room. You have these big like ergonomic stations that like I don't know, it looks like you're in the Matrix. And I'd have my sunglasses on, my headphones on, and I would learn to kind of twitch my finger a little while, so it looked like I was working, but I was pretty much asleep for most of my shift. I was hitting my quota, and they didn't really care. So, but after a while, I'm like, man, I couldn't take it anymore, so I quit.
Mhm.
But that was a cool first job. From there, I was a modeler for a while for a company. At first, it was 3Name3D, but then they merged into Viewpoint Digital.
Mhm.
For any of the old timers that would go to SIGGRAPH, you get that big, thick Viewpoint catalog. I worked there for a while.
Nice.
Mostly did cars for TV commercials. We'd do like physical wireframes. We'd like lay out with actual tape over the car, wireframe in rows and around the
Mhm.
window, and then we had this huge ferro arm, like robot looking thing that you'd basically touch to where the tape intersected, and then some guy sitting over there would hit the meh point button, and then so we would just sample the whole
Man,
car like that.
that's
Um,
insane.
and we also did a lot of web 3D stuff. We were sort of like the web 3D specialist part of the office, and that led me. So my first two games I worked on were at that place. I did some model. We were hired to do some modeling for the fourth Tomb Raider, which is Tomb Raider Revelations. I modeled the head, the face for the main villain, Warner Von Croy, was his name,
Nice.
and Microsoft Baseball. We did some stadiums for them. And from there, I moved into sort of games proper. I left there in like 98-ish, around there, 98, 99, and headed up to Seattle for a little company called Wild Tangent. If you bought I think a Dell like in the early 2000s, it probably had a couple Wild Tangent games on them. And nothing really of note, although it's kind of fun with my game industry colleagues. Sometimes we'll joke about who worked on the dumbest thing, and I almost always win with I worked on the Axe body spray Mojo Master video game.
Huh.
It is a hit on. It's terrible.
Yeah. Was it like a flash game?
No, so this is so Wild Tangent was started by this guy Alex Jane St. John, who was one of the creators of DirectX. So that computers have 3D graphics on them.
Mm-hmm.
He was involved in the fundamentals of that. And
That's awesome.
and while he was there, after he left Microsoft, he was working to get 3D built into the web browser. So Internet Explorer at that time had a bunch of 3D APIs in it.
Hmm.
You could render 3D scenes like a game engine in Internet Explorer, and nobody knew about this. Like he and his team like
Man.
snuck it in, or I don't know, like something crazy. And
Yeah.
so he left Microsoft and started this company to sort of take advantage of that. And we just made a little bunch of web games.
That's so
Was
cool.
basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Worked on a lot of really cheesy. I was in the advert game division, so we'd get hired by Chrysler to make a game about their newest Jeep that's coming out, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And then yeah, spent probably worked on 15 or so games there. They were little tiny productions, like 4 people over 4 months. We would just crank
Man.
out games like so
Yeah.
fast of all different types, and it was a great like education. I got to do every single art job there is in games there, from art direction to UI, mocap, character modeling, lighting, outsource managing, like
Man.
everything under the sun I'd touched. So it was a really great like crash course in how to do game art. But then that sort of led to my next job at FASA, where that was my first proper, like, I'm an effects artist now. So this is around 2005 or so. So they hired me to just do the particles. I was kind of the go-to guy for particle stuff at Wild
Mm-hmm.
Tangent. And then, yeah, we did Shadowrun under Microsoft at FASA. Love that
Nice.
game. It's now like basically defunct. It was not well received, but like such a super fun game. And then from there, I went on to Bungie, working on Halo 3. And then from there, I worked at Infinity Ward on the Call of Duty games. I was the head of their effects department for 8 of my 10 years there.
Nice.
And then Undertone FX. After about a
Undertone
decade,
effects. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
after
so how did that transition kind of happen? Was it more of like, based on your experience that you just shared, kind of being able to wear all hats and just get so much experience. You mentioned like the term crash course, which I would totally agree with that. That's exactly what it sounded like. But like, did you see that really kind of triggering something in your mind where you were like, oh, I could do this, like outside on my own, start my own company?
It didn't exactly happen like that. I sort of fell into it, to be honest.
Nice.
There was no intention to like, I'm gonna go start my own company
Yeah.
now. Really, it was a decade at Infinity Ward, and just over time, productions get bigger. First one I worked on there, I started right at the end of Modern Warfare 1. So really, Modern Warfare 2 was my first full production there,
Mm-hmm.
and there's about 75 devs, and at the end of it, Infinite Warfare, the space Call of Duty in space was the last
Yeah.
one that I did at Infinity Ward. It was over 1,000 people on it across 5 studios. It's just a mega production. We had 32 credited effects artists that I was sort of responsible for, which is about half the size of the entire game studio for the first
Yeah.
Call of Duty ever. So it just
Oh my gosh.
it got it got bigger, and expectations are higher. The graphics get
Mm-hmm.
more realistic. The the console hardware gets more power over time,
Yep.
and it was stressful. The last one I did there was
Mm-hmm.
it was a bit of a rough production, and I crunched probably more than I ever have in my life on that one, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to I don't want to do
Yeah.
that anymore.
Yep. After that one.
Yeah, so they let me work remote. So my last game with Activision was, I asked if I could just work from home on one of the other studios' games,
Mm-hmm.
and they let me for a year. So I worked on World War II with the Sledgehammer guys,
Nice.
and I'm like, oh man, this is great. There's no, when you're sitting at home, like it's just 8-hour days. There's no crunch. There's no politics. Everything's
Yep.
like just, I'm just making art. I'm not, in
Mm-hmm.
meetings all day and doing production stuff, and like, yay, I gotta blow up airplanes. This is cool again. This is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I started doing all this stuff.
Yeah, it brings back the core of what interested you in the first place and why
Yeah.
you had become passionate about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Blowing
exactly.
stuff up.
Blowing stuff, making it rain and blowing stuff up.
Making it rain and blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. It resonates with me.
Yeah, which is exactly what you guys do too. Um, so, at the end of that, the questions, so now what do I do? Do I stay on with Sledge? They kind of wanted me to move up to San Francisco, which I didn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or do I stay? They go back to Infinity Ward. They had kind of like already started on the next game, and they'd already put new like effects leadership in place, so it was not really on the table for me to slot back into where I was.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, maybe it's time to move on now, and I did.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was really to just, one, chill out for like 6 months, not to just kind of decompress from, the decade of explosions that I had just done.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I moved out to Savannah. We just wanted to, our thought was, if we left LA, if I stayed in LA, I figured I'd end up in another big studio, maybe Respawn or Naughty Dog or Sony, and just, crunching again and
Yeah.
doing the grind. I'm like, I like staying home. It's nice. So we figured if we moved to somewhere less expensive, maybe even higher quality of life, I wouldn't have to work
Mm-hmm.
as much. So that was the original plan, and then kind of almost immediately I started getting effects artists in games are in like crazy ultra demand. So the moment I'm not at a studio anymore, I start getting hit up for hey, can you want to do
Mm-hmm.
the Halo VR thing with my old Bungie buddies? I'm like, yes, I want.
Sounds good.
Yes, I want to do the Halo VR. So
Can I work from home?
yeah, totally. Everything was remote. Yeah. So I did like a little contract, and then I just kept getting hit up for contract work, and to the point where I started getting multiple contracts at the same time, and I couldn't do it all myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
conveniently, and this wasn't part of the plan at all, but SCAD is right here, a mile from my house, one of the best art
Yeah.
schools in the country that have a
That's
killer
great.
effects program and a killer games program. So I'm like, all right, let's do some stuff here. So I sort of got in with the
Yeah,
teachers.
I was gonna say that's really interesting. So you didn't plan SCAD being right next to you.
Nope. Here's everyone meet Bijou. This is the company mascot.
Bijou. is named after the tracking software?
No,
Or
it means a jewel in French. That was
okay, okay.
more.
I was a huge nerd just then. Pretend like that didn't happen.
Okay, I'm not familiar with the other bijou. Yeah, so we sort of about 4 years ago we were like, okay, well, what if we hire a SCAD student, kind of train them up, as long as they
Hmm.
know enough about at the time Cascade was Niagara's, or sorry, Unreal's editor, and we can kind of train them the rest of the way as long as they know the basics. So yeah, we formed the company. I made the website in a weekend, and my wife has a legal background, which is great. So
Nice,
she
yeah.
did all the paperwork and financing and all that, and we, hired our first employee, and then just kind of grew from there.
Yep.
We're up to like
That's so cool.
15 people now, about 4 years later.
Man, that's awesome. And when you and I had kind of first started talking, I was like, come on, he's like right next to SCAD. That had to have been in the in the plan, the mastermind. So
Nope.
the fact that that wasn't, maybe your subconscious had planned this.
Yeah, could maybe.
We'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Perhaps
The evil subconscious mastermind.
destiny
It knew
intervened.
that's what you were gonna
Yeah.
do. Nice. That's really cool. So, moving over, like, there's so much going on in the real time space right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's really gone. I use this term loosely, but also not. But it's gone very much mainstream, to the fact where nearly everyone has heard about Unreal Engine, even if you're not in, film and games productions. It's really interesting how often I can just strike up a conversation with someone that's about my age and talk about, they may not know all like the ins and outs of virtual production, but thanks to, like some behind the scenes stuff from The Mandalorian and all these like featurettes talking more openly about this stuff, it's helped that widespread adoption. And so that's like a really cool thing that I can just continue to nerd out over. And it's also cool because people are really seeing the application of what that means. Even I think it was last week, Unreal had teased that they're going to be included inside of the new Rivian electric vehicles. And
Oh, wow.
that's kind of going to be, from what I understood, that's going to be like what their like UI and brain of that car is going to be.
Wow.
So that's what I got from the teaser.
Crazy.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but it was just very fascinating. But again, it's because the engine is built in a way that can handle very complex computing and also make stuff look pretty. So
Yeah.
with all of that being said, like, where do you think, I mean, obviously we have also, collaborated on some new products inside of this space. Where do you think kind of the next step is as it pertains to, all of the metaverse things, VR, AR, XR, whatever else are becoming mainstream, thanks to, the team at Meta and having affordable virtual reality that is also really high quality? That was a massive question.
Yeah.
I kept going. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm in. I'm in.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing time we live in too, and COVID has spurred on so many changes, and like virtual production just went through the roof because people needed to not go into spaces together anymore, and yeah, it's a super exciting time for all this. Where is it heading? Like, I mean, yeah, I can go on 10 tangents about VR and AR and virtual production and machine learning and the metaverse and everything. NFTs are coming up as like an art thing. A lot of game companies now are talking about NFTs for having that be sort of the mechanism by which in-game items are sort of tracked and stored and moved across games and platforms and the metaverse, and like, yeah, so much so much to talk, like crazy stuff. I'll tell you just
So cool.
a few things that when I think about sort of the future of real time and games and real time rendering, I'm excited for what distributed rendering, the promise of distributed processing. When Stadia came out, which kind of I think kind of fizzled out a bit, but I actually misunderstood what it was that Stadia, when they first sort of announced and described it, I'm like, oh my goodness, this it's
Yeah.
yay, it's finally here. This thing I've been thinking about, which and it was shown a little bit in a long time ago actually, like the Microsoft Xbox API, and hardly anybody uses any of this, has some distributed functionality where you can say on an Xbox we were super obsessive about numbers, right? Like you have 60 FPS, which is to say, you know, uh, there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. If you divide that by 60, you get 16.6 milliseconds. So draw everything in that much time, and that's what we are
Mhm.
now experts at. Is like, okay, the effects budget is, 2.5 milliseconds of that or whatever on CPU and GPU,
Yep.
distributed graphics. So like we are so obsessive about these numbers and load and fill and particle counts and all this stuff
Mhm.
because the game's frame rate cannot tank. Like you didn't do your job if it does.
Yeah.
But I am excited for a world, and this will happen one day when say like my I've got I've got Halo up in the background right there doing nothing right now, right? So what if my neighbor's playing Halo and he wanted to suck up my Xbox and use it? What if I was making a big crazy destruction scene? What if I wanted like Transformers level graphics with billions of?
Mhm.
You can't sim that in 2.5 milliseconds. But what
Yeah.
if I could say, give me another 150 Xboxes for the next 7 seconds? Like
Yep.
crazy, like distributed, like render farms, like Weta has in their building. Like
Mhm.
one day, consoles will be able to do that, to consume each other and use idle resources, and
Yeah.
like that's cool stuff. And I can't wait till like this is more the norm.
Yeah.
Um,
Even with so this past year, Amazon had released their Nimble Studio, and so it's kind of like the workstation equivalent of what you mentioned. They advertise it as like, oh, if you're a visual effects studio, if you have animators and other people that you need to hire as contractors, within, I forget what their like time frame was, but it was like when within 60 seconds or something, definitely less than 5 minutes, their workstation can be like their virtual workstation can be created. And so it has access to all of their shared files. Everything's being rendered on like their S3 backbone. So when something renders out, you don't have to transfer it again to someone else. It's already delivered. And that being kind of like one of those first stepping stones into what you mentioned as it pertains to like visual effects and how can we, I mean, just imagine having Unreal Engine on one of those, and as you said, it's like, I need a little more, and by a little more I
a
mean
lot more.
a lot more, a lot more.
Yeah.
And you kind of work at both ends of this. So like if the problem is here in the middle, you can attack it by improving your engine, right? So it's like the engine can run more efficiently. It can uh, do things in ways that it hasn't been able to do as the technology develops. But then you kind of also work top down at the problem of how can we put more like resources behind the engine. And so I think it's really cool to kind of have those two things in play and kind of, I mean, you're working towards the same solution in different ways because like those are the two variables that are a lot more locked down. And same thing with like VR, right? So it's like our technology is getting better, it's getting lighter weight, it's higher refresh rates, higher resolution, and then there's always that price factor, right? So it's like
Yeah.
super expensive to make, but as we're seeing with like the Quest 2 that just hit it perfectly
Yeah.
for that widespread adoption, I think that is kind of the same thing of attacking it from a couple different areas.
Yeah, and the no cable too is huge.
Yeah.
It's it makes the experience so much better.
Yep.
Yeah, one other area I'm excited to see advance too is, it feels like we've come so far from, just graphics, if you look like 10 years or 20 years ago, like, oh my goodness, like it's
Mm-hmm.
in real time, and even rendered, right, has advanced as so much. But so, environments, shaders, characters, we've seen characters, I think, as good as film work in games at this point. It's kind of comes down now to effort, where,
Mm-hmm.
if a movie's 2 hours long and a game is, 12 or 18 or something, like it's a
Yeah.
lot more work to do that much, content to the same quality. So it's often not as big. But two areas I think, they're just not comparable as effects, specifically, like, simulations and animation too, like, just in the constraints of, like, the player is the actor and your controls are
Mm-hmm.
like two thumbsticks and a trigger.
Yep.
I've seen some like super cool stuff with machine learning and animation that is like, oh man, it's I think that's going to be another area for a lot of advancement, where,
Mm-hmm.
as the character's navigating terrain, right now it's like, you have your run cycle and your turn and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, some of the demos with machine learning versions of this that handle, like, center of gravity and weight. And the thing that
Mm-hmm.
I really noticed is not like what the legs are doing, it's what the arms are doing. Like, as you're navigating over terrain, and like they'll kind of like, move their hands around to like
Yeah, to like catch
keep balance,
themselves.
and
Mm-hmm.
like, I think that's exciting too. That's going to be a cool
Yeah.
advancement.
Yeah. I'm all about some like LinkedIn, and there's a lot of like walk cycle animations and stuff, but specifically when it talks about like, or someone in my network shares rather, like a hand that's like photorealistic and it's just like reaching out, but then you see all of like the breakdown of like the skin and all the tendons just like stretching, and then they throw it on, a really nice render, and it's just like, man, that's gotta be that next logical step of, it's so much work, and it's really is its own craft in and of itself, and that's why, all of these visual effects disciplines have just spider webbed out, right? So it's like, oh yeah, now grooming is a thing, and now
Yeah.
like this person, this department, anyone else is like just going to work on hair and different particles, and so it's really fascinating, I think, and it's going to be interesting to see even in the real time space how all of those different things play out and try to. It's exciting. That's the
Yeah.
summary.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Yep. So, as it pertains to real time things, how? First off, like another question I wanted to ask was, what are some of the most impressive like real time effects that you've seen in game? I know, you're also a member of the VES. There's the real time category is relatively newer, isn't it?
No, actually, well, I mean,
Really?
relatively, right? It's so we're
Mm-hmm.
on the 20th annual VES Awards. Actually, voting is open right now for VES members. Please do go
Nice.
vote. The five, no, I hope I don't skip somebody. So the five nominees this year were just announced. So, let's see: Forza, Returnal, Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, man, and they're all so impressive. Like, man, I gotta say, like, the last time I was personally like, holy goodness, what is happening here? I played. I don't play through start to end a lot of games these days, but Ratchet and Clank I did. I got my PS5,
Mm-hmm.
and oh man, like, it close to the opening of the game, they just like take you from entire environment to entire environment through like five different ones. You're kind of like, you're like portaling through space time and stuff. And
Yeah.
like, I'm like, this is impossible. Like, 2 months ago, there was no hardware that could accomplish this, and here now PS5 and this team,
Yeah.
like, I was mind blown. And like, like, huge cityscapes like before you that load in a second, and it has to do with, like, a lot of times you think of power in terms of like GPU and CPU and cores and multi-threading, but you don't really think about that the drive speed itself can make
Mm-hmm.
a massive difference in terms of experience. So like my jaw was just on the floor for that one. That was super cool. Battlefield,
Yeah.
I worked on a game this year, and I did one effect I was super proud of. Spent like probably more time than I've ever spent on a single effect. I'm like, all right, this is like super stoked. This is gonna be my VES submission this year. I'm excited
Nice.
about it. And then for various reasons, we weren't able to submit it. And but then Battlefield trailer dropped, and I'm like, oh man, they did the same. Like, oh, theirs is way better than mine.
Uh,
I'm like, shit. But yeah, there's such great work. But yeah, the VES category, I believe there's two VES awards right there. I believe I am the only person in the world with two of those under their belt in the real time
nice.
category.
Yeah.
But it's been around. Let's see. I first became aware of it when I had worked on Halo 3. So this is what 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So well over a decade. Um, and I worked on it, and then I left to other things. But my former boss, Steve, he'd come to LA for the VES Awards. What's that? And they won. And I met him out at the hotel, and he's like, "Look at this! This is
Nice.
awesome." And so it had been going a few years before that, but they killed it at one point. They had removed the real time category,
Sad.
and
And then they're like, "What are we doing?"
well, I was involved in its return, and I am now like very. I showed up at their annual meeting one day with a paper with a list of names of people that would submit if they just brought it back, and
Nice.
and they told me like not this year, but get involved with the awards committee and make your pitch, and then we can
Mm-hmm.
evaluate it for next year, and it ended up coming back.
Nice.
But that actually led to the creation of what is now the Realtime VFX website and Facebook group and Discord server. It was
That's what.
originally started at that moment to help coordinate effects leads across studios to like petition the VES to get the awards, the real-time category
Nice.
back.
That is so
And
cool.
now it's just an
And
awesome community.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like when we had first started, you and I first started talking about like potential partnership, and you were so welcoming to my not real time background. You're so welcoming to like invite me to all those like underground groups, and I just remember being like, man, this is such a legit community. Like everyone is super helpful, super friendly, and the fact that they're also working on like some of the largest titles, for things being made, it's just really cool. So I've always appreciated that.
Yeah, it's turned out to be really cool. And the Discord, the Discord is the newest one to sprout up, but that's kind of in my mind, sort of the main thing now, main event where I mean, if you're working on Unreal and you have questions on anything,
Hmm.
like the guys, like Wyeth at at Epic, who's one of the dudes creating Niagara, is in there
Yeah.
answering all of your questions. It's like it doesn't
Where
get
else
better
are you
than
gonna
that.
get that? Yeah, seriously. It's like there's not an email address that you can. That's so cool.
Yeah,
That's so
it's
awesome.
pretty sweet.
So in terms of, we talked a little bit about performance, and we've also in this episode talked about like some of our collaboration. For someone that would be unfamiliar, DJ, can you kind of bring them up to speed on our Ultimate Fire Pack? Just top level view. What is it? What makes it special?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, this is our the first sort of co-product launch with you guys, where basically, the genesis of the idea, like I've been using your guys' footage for forever, right? And I always thought like back in the day when I'd used, some of your competitors and your footage too, like we had your whole library, right? Like Activision licensed the whole thing. But we never really used that much of it. A couple things here and there, and it came down to like in game effects, you're doing tasks in days, and so there's not a lot of time to like take a step back and prep the footage,
Mm-hmm.
and it always kind of bummed me out. I had asked and been denied from my bosses to hire a compositor, which is pretty unheard of in games. There's no compositing in a game engine. Everything it's just rendered live. But I wanted somebody basically full time just taking your guys' footage and prepping it, because like we'll do like, okay, we need an explosion. All right, we'll pick the one, we'll put it in. All right, go. Like we'll just.
Yeah.
We don't have, and like you've got tons of like smokes and dirt fall. I'm like, I'd love to just audition some of them. Like maybe there's some that won't work and some do work better that you wouldn't expect. I don't have time for any of that. So, when we started Undertone and I started sort of doing some of this myself, and we got a guy in that was doing some compositing on our team, I'm like, I would love it if other game artists out there didn't have to go through this ever. What like, man, how much time would it save if this was just like you got sold it that way? We're kind of already doing the work, so let's just team up and do it. And so we talked about it, and I can't remember if I hit up you about it or you hit up us about it or what, but I think it was kind of like we were both having the idea at the same time, and high fives, and so anyway, that's the background of it. So really what this first one is the Ultimate Fire Pack Volume 1. We took a bunch of your fire footage, we prepped it for the game engine, optical flow, blueprints, tons of exposed parameters. There's 4 sizes, tiny, small, medium, large, for like from candle size to like building on fire. Each has 4 variants. They're all 4K, tons of memory, tuning settings, distance, very professionally put together, and the highest quality you're ever going to see because it's filmed, right? So this is realistic, and we shipped it on the Unreal Store and the Unity Store, and it's being very well received. 5 stars across the board.
Hey.
All right.
And we even got we were selected for the month of, I think they ran it in like 2-week increments or something, but it was in January, ran by Epic Games in the Unreal Engine Showcase, which helped us, again, being pretty new on the platform itself. It was cool to kind of have that exposure just a month after we'd launched it to the public.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool to have that affirmation of, hey, we're onto something. Sometimes it feels like we make things and we're not sure how they're going to be received, especially with ActionVFX starting out, which is why like our Kickstarter really helped us a ton, because we knew what we wanted to do, but how are you going to fund it? You can't hire pyrotechnicians, rent red cameras, and do everything for free. So what's the alternative? And there's always like that healthy risk that's involved with anything new or anything that hasn't been done before. And even hearing you speak about like, hey, we saw a need, this was a huge pain point, like that's just music to my ears. Like, yes, those are the solutions and innovations that like we want to strive to create for artists, ultimately to make their lives better, right? Like it's a quality of life improvement for people, for human people sitting in chairs that allows them to do their job, right? So it's like the shots, the scenes, anything else has to get done regardless of if they have the tools or not. So it's really encouraging to me to be able to partner with you all on that and continue what we've been doing with visual effects compositors, but transition that over in a new space. And even all of the number of VFX people and compositors that are working inside of Unreal Engine now is just, it's mind-blowing. So I love it.
We've seen an uptick in requests for us to do not games, but like television production stuff, like virtual production, and it's a little outside of our wheelhouse, but like, I mean, where do you find experts at Unreal Effects? Like, there's not a lot out there really. So yeah, we're kind of at the front of that. It's great.
I love it. So share a little bit about what are some of I know we have some more like real-time products in the works. You want to tease some of that and then maybe wish list things that you'd like to do that maybe aren't in production?
Yeah. So we're already into production on the next 2. We got a guy in the field right now gathering, rocks and debris and asphalt and concrete for our muzzle flash and impacts pack is going to be next. You guys have already got a lot of, like killer filmed muzzle flashes, and there's some tricks you have to do to get those to work right in 3D from like down down barrel to side third person shot and the debris. So that's in progress now. Weapons pack. We've got another weather one in mind. Those are sort of the first two, the next two that we're gonna do, and then we just have a whole, basically like it's just scrub through the ActionVFX website, turn all that into game ready assets. So falling dust, atmospherics. I think atmospherics and mist might be a like a high priority one too. Like we're getting. Whenever we get requests to do work that like uses your stuff, that's like goes right up in
Yep.
in priority. So
Let's just.
so yeah, mist, falling dust, weather is actually going to be the one after weapons that we do. That's already started. Yeah, just all the stuff on your website.
That's so cool. I can't remember if it was a book I was reading or what this past week, but it was talking about like, how do you know that you have the right person for a specific job or a specific task? And the thought that was conveyed was, whenever you start talking to that person, they say, oh, wait, we should also, and it was like, cut them off right there. That's the right person for the job.
Yeah.
And it was really cool, when you and I just kind of started brainstorming, and you sent me this email over that was like, oh, here would be some other cool effects like in the future. And I kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so legit. Like, and they were all super solid based off of like stuff that you've needed in the past. And I could just see that like just all of those dots had connected into that. And it was like, oh, this would be awesome. People also need this a lot. So it's really cool to see that kind of like wish list that we're putting together of some of these different tools and new things that we can work on together and create. So I'm so excited.
Yeah, here we go.
Nice. Okay, DJ, kind of wrapping up here, where can people find you if they haven't got that from this episode just yet?
Yeah, just my email is dj@undertonefx.com, and you can ping me there. We've got a website, undertonefx.com. There's a contact in there. There's a jobs thing if anybody wants to apply. I'm on Discord all the time in the Realtime VFX Discord. So any of those spots.
Thank you so much for carving out some time to chat, DJ. And as I already said, I'm stoked to kind of start this partnership together, this journey that has so much possibility. It's like Realtime effects are most definitely the future. They're the right now. And it's really exciting to be able to partner with you, your team at Undertone FX. Y'all just do some amazing work. And it's really cool that our companies just align so well together. It's like, hey, yeah, you have this discipline. We have this discipline. Let's do cool stuff together.
Yeah.
Like, literally, let's blow stuff up.
Yeah.
Together.
Okay, so you gotta have me out though to Tennessee sometime, and
yes,
I want to be at the next explosion shoot because those are fun.
Yep, you're most definitely getting an invite. It's not so we got our own studio now.
Yeah.
And Savannah is not far away.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make that happen.
Excellent.
This year, we're gonna do it this year.
Killer.
We'll put it on the books.
Set it up.
It's gonna happen. Awesome, DJ. Thanks so much. And thank you for listening to this episode of Ask an Artist.
See y'all.